I think he does their radio now, and I've talked to him a bunch of times about it. He goes, man, you just couldn't see the ball. And we would wear white jersey.
He'll keep telling you that.
Yeah. But that was a good one. That was a great crowd that night.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
I like it.
Yeah. All right. He does their radio now, and I've talked to him a bunch of times about.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah. All right. So do you have anything else up, like the YouTube channel on your computer or anything?
Me?
Yeah. I just want to make sure we don't get any feedback. I'm turning everything else off on mine.
No, I just have Outlook.
Okay.
Yeah, Ernie, I just pushed it live. I have my YouTube muted.
Okay.
Nothing will come through mine, and I'll mute my Zoom as well.
All right. I think we should be good.
I'll tweet out the link right now.
All right, we're going to get going.
Am I good like this? I'm okay with headphones in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Trying to minimize the crying baby that wakes up in 20 minutes.
I'm sure my dog will start barking soon.
Mine too.
Okay, we'd like to welcome everybody in that's enjoying homecoming weekend at Johns Hopkins, first ever virtual homecoming here. I'd like to thank the Alumni Association for welcoming in athletics to be a part of the festivities this weekend. I'd like to let everybody know this interview is brought to you by the Johns Hopkins Federal Credit Union, the financial institution serving Johns Hopkins since 1971, built for and by the Hopkins community. I'm thrilled to welcome Johns Hopkins men's lacrosse coach Peter Milliman to homecoming at Hopkins. Coach, welcome. I'm sure it's been a whirlwind, but glad to have you here celebrating homecoming with us.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
I'd also like to remind fans real quickly after this interview with Coach, you could stay tuned in on the Hopkins YouTube channel. We'll be broadcasting the 2005 National Championship game against Duke. Johns Hopkins assistant coach Jamison Kesterer, who was a sophomore midfielder on that team, will be online chatting with fans, so you'll be able to send in your questions. And we, of course, ask you, if you're tuned in right now, feel free to send questions into us through the YouTube live chat room, and we'll ask Coach as we have the opportunity. So, Coach, I guess I'll just ask you, I'm sure it's been pretty dull up there in the Milliman household for the last 2 or 3 weeks. How are things going?
Not dull. They're eventful. It's going well. We're plugging along here, making sense of every day. There's a little chaos here and there, but it's been exciting. I'll just say it that way.
I'm sure it has been. Never a dull moment. Just having 2 little kids makes it crazy enough that you throw a move and a job change in, and I'm sure it's exciting, but a little hectic as well. People tuned in for Hopkins homecoming here, wanting to know a little bit more about you. So let's go back to when you were a little guy. Tell us about your start playing lacrosse, playing sports, what you were like as a kid.
As a kid, I was pretty active. I played a lot of sports. I was, climbing trees and one of those kind of guys. I grew up playing soccer and football mostly. Football was really my first athletic interest. I thought I was going to go to Florida State, or I was all excited about it. I started playing lacrosse in 8th grade. Just had some friends, Fairport, New York, that introduced me to it. Really enjoyed the game right away, and then from there I was just kind of off on my own. I spent a lot of time, we moved around a little bit, and I spent a lot of time learning the game myself and having my own interest in it, and kind of developing a real appreciation. And that kind of led me through to college, and then, sticking with the game.
So you would have played, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit before kind of this explosion in the club scene.
Yeah, so bit before.
Process would have been more just as a member of the high school team. Is that correct?
Yeah, when I was growing up, it was really high school lacrosse, a little bit of summer league. There was kind of a Rochester area summer league. Some towns had teams, some didn't. Sometimes you combined. And then Empire State Games was really the big tournament. That was really the only recruiting event, so to speak, that brought teams together. But it was a New York only event. And then there was a couple camps, 2 or 3 camps, 205, Top Star, I think. Not even sure what else there was. It was just kind of getting, might have been the first year or two.
What was tell us a little bit about Pete Milliman, the player, either in high school or maybe more in college. What will we have seen?
I kind of worry about what that would look like actually right now. I played defense, and it was really just a product of, that line was shorter my first day at lacrosse practice. And so they said, go play defense. And that's what I did. And I, enjoyed it. I thought it was, fun. I thought it was fit for me. I got to college and the line for attack was shorter one day. And so I went to go play that. But I think I was always competitive. I really loved being out there. I loved playing. I loved, all the sports. I think I just like competing. I used to play, a lot of basketball. I still kind of, I don't say I play. I put sneakers on and run up and down a little bit. I wouldn't even say I run, but yeah, I loved to play. So that was really my interest.
Somewhat familiar with your career at Gettysburg, of course, Johns Hopkins in the Centennial Conference for many of our other athletic programs. Your fondest memories of playing at Gettysburg. I know you played in 2 national championship games. Just things you think back on and think, that was pretty cool to be a part of that.
I mean, my memories really circle around the friendship that I had with a lot of really significant people in my life. My teammates and my friends that I still talk to, that I still work with. There's a lot of them that I coach lacrosse, and we stay connected. And we have a little Gettysburg Mafia. We roll around to different recruiting tournaments. We always sit together and talk to each other. And our coach, who still coaches, sometimes he'll sit next to those. Next to us at those events and copy our notes from us and things like that. But those are my fondest memories, is the little times, in between things, after practices, staying out on the field, the day before games, after pregame practice, we'd stay out on the field for like an hour or two and just hanging out and shooting around and enjoying the time.
So tell us a little bit about your family. I know you have 2 young children. Your wife, and I'm not sure if you know this, but at Johns Hopkins, the 2 most identifiable people on campus are the president and the men's lacrosse coach. So you're one of the first 2 families of Johns Hopkins University. Just tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, I live with Coach Milliman. She's the head coach of the house. She's the most competitive person that lives here. She's the boss, and she's amazing. She's holding the fort down for most of my time right now, while I try and get some stuff done while she's chasing around 2 little kids. But she's from New Jersey, and she played lacrosse at York College, so not too far away. And she coached at Frostburg State, and that's where we first met, when she was working there. I got 2 beautiful little girls. Lake is 5 months old, and Reese just turned 2, and they are uniquely their own, but a handful, both of them.
So are you getting any sleep right now? Are you getting a full night with the 5
Yeah, they're Lake is, Reese is good. She's 2, so she's pretty steady with it. But Lake has been, as long as we don't put her down too early. But yeah, she'll sleep through the night. She's just she's an eating machine, and so she's requires a lot of attention. She's busy, and she'll sleep probably 8 hours on a regular basis. So that helps me.
Yeah, that 8 hours is a godsend. That's great. So
Yeah.
I know your wife was the head coach at Wells College, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
up there. What's life like in your house during the season with 2 head coaches?
It's also pretty challenging. We've had to do a lot of sacrificing for each other. Her definitely more than me, for reasons like this, to take this opportunity. She's sometimes taking kids to work with her, getting players that are injured to watch the girls on the sideline, or watch Reese when she was really young, or my mom will come sometimes and meet and watch the kids for a little bit. Or my mom was actually here this morning so that she could help us watch the girls while we packed, because after this interview we're driving down to Baltimore to see if we can find a place to live. So it's really, like, I think a lot of families are dealing with right now in this
Sure.
in this situation. It's all hands on deck, and so whatever you can do, because there's not a daycare open, and there's not a lot
Right.
of babysitters available, and there's not too many people to call. I had to send my mom away with my dog today, because I didn't have anywhere to leave my dog when we came down to Maryland. So everybody's helping out. It's the only way it would work.
Yeah, the people with younger kids right now, it's such a challenge. My kids are a little older, so I'm not having to deal with those things, but daycare and how much appreciation we have for those folks right now, or teachers, elementary school teachers.
Teachers is huge. I've had that from a lot of friends who've got multiple ages in their house that they have to teach. And then, my biggest hurdle is daycare, is that, without that, I've got two kids that need attention
Yeah.
and care all day long. And it really makes you disciplined about how you're getting your work done, and understanding the sacrifices.
We'll jump away from your family real quick, but I'll put you on the spot. Better player, you or your wife?
She's faster than me. I'll say that for sure.
All right. Again, a reminder, fans, you'll be able to tune in to the 2005 National Championship game right after this interview with Coach Milliman, right on Hopkins Sports YouTube channel. Assistant Coach Jamison Kester will join us to do a live interactive chat with fans. He was a sophomore midfielder on that team, so we hope you stay tuned and enjoy our homecoming look back at the 05 National Championship. Coach, after you graduated, or after you finished your playing career at Gettysburg, what was on the horizon there for you? Not everybody wants to jump in and be a coach right away. What was your thought there when you finished up at Gettysburg?
I tried a couple things. I went into marketing. I got a job out in Boston. I did that for a year. I moved back home. I tried to, continue play a little professional. Didn't break the lineup very often, but I was excited about the opportunity, and I really enjoyed the experience. And I got into some other, opportunities really to pay some bills, to keep me going forward, and pay out some student loans, and allow me to keep trying to run around the field. But I bartended a lot. I worked in restaurants. I was a cook. I did a lot of things in kitchens, and really found an interest and a passion there. I was pretty close to taking a step in that direction before a couple conversations about the possibility of coaching, and then that kind of steered me in the other way. But I was probably a little bit of a fork in the road there for a bit.
Who does more of the cooking now, you or your wife?
I do.
You do. What are your favorite dishes? What should we be looking for?
Well, I eat a lot of chicken, but my wife is not as much into chicken as I am. So we've what did we have? Well, we had some steaks the other night. I don't know what I make. I keep it pretty simple. I don't know. It's not really fancy, but
That's okay.
kind of cook across the board, I guess.
So diners, drive-ins, and dives. Guy Fieri is coming to Pete Milliman's restaurant. What's your go-to?
I guess that might make meatballs.
Okay.
Yeah, I got my mom's meatball. Well, probably my grandma's meatball recipe, which I think is pretty good.
Okay.
I don't know. I had a steak sandwich for breakfast the other day, just because it's quarantine and I can eat whatever I want whenever I feel like it.
There you go. I've noticed Guy likes to eat meat, so I think if you served anything
Yeah.
with meat, he'd probably be okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So you made that transition into coaching, and
Yeah.
you've been at Division III, Division II, and now Division I. How did those experiences, at Division II and Division III, kind of help mold or shape you as the coach you are today?
It's interesting because I think this is maybe the most common misconception, that the biggest similarity between Division I, II, and III is the lacrosse. The differences are in the type of schools and the size of it, and the levels of expectation and support that you're around, financial implications of different things. But the game is the game. I don't think there's a whole lot different there. I think there's some subtle differences in the way that you coach teams at different levels. But, a lot of it is just the understanding of what you're looking at and how to find a success out of it. So I think there was a lot of learning when it came to, what goes into making a successful team. And what makes that work, and the diversity of experiences and in the backgrounds that I had. And I think that has always made me feel a little bit more confident about what I was dealing with, because when I got to Cornell, I was dealing with so many really driven, really successful, young men who I didn't have to babysit as much or twist their arms. There's always some coaching when it comes to that, but at some other places there were guys that just wanted to be on the field all day, but maybe they didn't have the same skills, or you get different degrees of personality and awareness of things. And so every experience, I think, benefits going forward. But I really valued that learning process, because it would not be the same today if I didn't have that.
How do you view Hopkins? You've been at Cornell, you've been at Princeton, you've been at Hopkins, kind of all similar or very strong academic institutions. So those two places really probably prepared you for the type of student you're going to work with, the type of athlete you're going to work with. And I'm sure it's an exciting opportunity here that you've taken on.
Yeah, I mean, there's similarities as many as there are differences, but being at a place where you're able to recruit really high achieving young men, guys that are driven. I mean, really one of the key components across the board is that you want to find guys who are driven to be successful, and they're willing to do things that maybe a lot of people aren't. That's some of the defining characteristics sometimes of young men. You find maybe have a little bit more maturity than most, and that you're not necessarily looking for just smarter kids. I mean, sometimes you'll find people with a little bit higher intelligence, but from my experience, most of the difference between coaching at Ivy League schools or at Johns Hopkins, and again, I haven't been here very long, but I'm starting to get to know the guys, is there's just a different level of determination and a drive going forward, and it's not necessarily an IQ element. I mean,
Sure.
it's really just what guys are willing to do to be successful, and that's something at a place like Johns Hopkins, one of the finest universities in the world, a lacrosse tradition that's unlike anyone else's, and you get to recruit the best young men in the country and in the world to come and compete together. And when you bring those people together, you can create something pretty special.
What have you been able to kind of do with the guys? I know it's obviously they're still going to school. People may forget that they still have classes. They just, if I'm not mistaken, we just finished finals on Thursday. So guys have been pretty tied into their academics, which maybe folks outside our world don't realize. But tell us a little bit about what you've been able to do with them in the last 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, so they've just been winding down, and so this whole coaching change, happened right near the end of their semester, and right off, I was really, I don't want to say too overwhelmed, but it was a lot coming at me at once. And so I needed to make sure I took it in stride and handled what I could. So I didn't get as far into that as maybe I could have. But right now we're focusing more on understanding our team, understanding Johns Hopkins lacrosse, and starting to build some relationships and some working knowledge as what we're doing together, and starting to establish some guidelines and some expectations. And so I've had a lot of conversations, a lot of text conversations, but more recently now we're starting to get into a bit more face-to-face, some Zooms and some group chats, and starting to build some, like I said, some boundary lines and some ideas for what we want to do going forward.
This may be a tough question, and if there's not an answer, that's fine. Obviously, there's so much uncertainty right now. Are you crafting a vision of what the fall will look like if everything is back to normal? And then kind of maybe thinking about, okay, this is the vision if we're not, and this is the direction we might have to go. If that may be an unanswerable question.
No, I think I understand what you're saying. It's really hard to craft a game plan that involves every variable possible. We can plan for the challenges that are going to come up. We're going to be ready for them, but there's so many differences and so many changes that could happen, whether school starts at the same time, whether it's partially online, whether guys are together, they're coming in waves. And I don't really know how those things could potentially happen. We're all hoping that, school starts on time, they let us come back to school, and we get to get out on the field and start running around and feeling like ourselves again. But if we don't, then we're going to have to deal with whatever those challenges are as well, because there's going to be a lot of adjustment going forward, even as there has been the last couple months. It's going to continue, even if we all get to come back on time.
Sure. So I know that I was fortunate enough you let me be in on that first Zoom when you met the team, and I remember yes, are there any questions? And guys wanted to know, who are your assistants going to be? And now 2 weeks later, we've answered those questions. Let's just talk about those guys. Jamison Kesterer, a Hopkins grad and a two-time national champion here. Just tell us a little bit about Jamison and what attracted you to bringing him back to Homewood.
Jamison's a really phenomenal young man to get to know. And I'd never met him before we first started talking, and I'd heard his name enough times, and I had an awareness of what he was doing. And obviously I'd seen some of his accomplishments, but I just reached out to him and wanted to ask if he was interested, because I had some respect for what he was doing, and he felt like he might have the ability to be the right fit. I think our conversation really took off right away. I just got immediately. I got an intensity. I got a drive from him. I got a clear vision of what he's done and what he wants to do. He's able to articulate the lessons and how he um, you know works through those so that he can develop concepts within the team. He's able to break down his philosophies off the field as well as on. It was really an impressive um, interview process, and he also, above all of those things, I tried to separate this one component because I didn't want it to cloud the first phase of the interview. But he's a proud Hopkins alum, and he's very, very driven for success at Johns Hopkins. And if I would have entered in with that at the front of it, it might have blurred the process, so to speak. But I think before I even got to that element of him as an alum, he was far and away my top choice. And I had some really great candidates. I mean, there were some other guys that I was really excited that if I ended up with them, then we were going to be in great place. But there was just a uniqueness of character with Jameson that I felt really strong about.
That's great to hear. As someone who's known him since he arrived as a freshman in the fall of 2003, I can't X and O with him. That's your expertise, but just a passion for Hopkins for sure, a maturity that he's always had since I met him, and I know that he'll do great things and be a great representative of the university for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Then you flip to the other side of the field, and that was a few days later with John Grant Jr. And just tell us a little bit about how that evolved. I know you played with him a little bit, a few years ago, but just tell us a little bit about that and your discussions and philosophies, maybe how they meshed.
Well, I've known Junior for quite a while, and we've become really good friends. And so through this process, since he started coaching a handful of years ago, we've started to become more than just buddies. We started to become colleagues that we could talk a little bit more lacrosse wise when it came to your coaching perspective. I didn't know if he was going to be a candidate early. Obviously the name was something that swirled around my head, but it didn't jump to the front right away because I didn't know if it was possible. I mean, obviously I had an interest in it because I know how talented he is, but he's got a setup out in Colorado and with a job and a house and a family and a daughter and everything like that. So it overtook me how invested he was in this process and how interested he was in coming to Johns Hopkins. It wasn't just a mention. It wasn't just a friendly do me a favor type thing. He really sold out and went very clearly after this job. And that's as soon as I got that sense from him, similar to Jameson, I realized how quickly he separated himself from the other candidates, because I know John really well, and I know how competitive he is, and I know how successful he is when the game is on the line. And those are things that there's not a very much comparison to. People who win, who have it in their core of their being, they know when it's time to win, when it's time to get things done. Those are the type of guys that you want with you in the fourth quarter, and you want to be training your guys throughout the week, because they're going to take all those little things seriously. They're going to take all those little drills, and they love competing. And he's got such a mind for the game. He's not just a super talented player. He's a really, really intelligent man who knows the game and knows what he's looking for, and is just now understanding the ability that he has as a coach on the other side of the sideline.
Sure. Well, I have to imagine that it was exciting when you shared that news with your team. I know that they were all very interested in hearing who would be joining you.
Mm-hmm.
But on both sides of the ball, the guys who play defense and the guys who play offense, I think when you introduced those two names, you had to have really piqued their interest, I'm sure.
I did. And honestly, I also had the pleasure of introducing both names to each other. And when I mentioned John to Jameson, I got a little bit of a wow from there too. And he obviously had an interest in that. And when I talked to Junior about who we were going to, when we had the hire finalized, he obviously, was interested because he sees the success and he sees what Jameson's been doing there. He immediately, his response was, that I want to play against that defense every day. That's what I want to compete against, somebody that's doing those things and coaching their guys like that. I want to figure out how to beat that. And again, that was right before I had made my final decision, but I knew where I was going with it. I got that sense from him that, that competition was going to drive this relationship.
Well, I know it's exciting for me as somebody who is kind of a secondary part of the operation that you'll have there. And we're all excited, looking forward to hopefully having a fall season and then building on that and moving into to next spring. So, one, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us here today. Also want to thank Susan Demuth, Pat Conklin, and Tom Calder from the Alumni Association for building athletics into the virtual homecoming here this weekend. Again, a reminder, fans, if you're listening right now, you'll be able to stay tuned to the Hopkins Sports YouTube channel and catch the 2005 National Championship game. Jameson Kester, our assistant coach, and a member of that team, will be chatting with fans throughout the game. So we hope that you'll stay tuned and join that. Coach, good luck with the move. Certainly appreciate your time. And hopefully this is the only virtual homecoming you will participate in at Hopkins next year. You'll have a great view from your spot on the sideline.
That's the plan. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Fans, we'll talk to you soon. Take care.